Hey folks, today I want to talk about the knocks on the Yamaha Super Tenere. You know, the things that people talk about online that are problems with the bike. So let's go through those right now. One of the first things that people talk about on the Tenere being an issue is that you can't turn off the ABS brakes, and that's true. There's supposed to be a trick where you put the bike on the center stand, start it up, run it in second gear, and that's supposed to disable the ABS. It might have worked on the first generation, but it doesn't work on the second generation bikes. Now for me, ABS hasn't really been too much of an issue. Where I've seen it come in is going on a downhill slope with some loose gravel. With the rear brake, it really wants to pulsate and it's going to reduce your stopping power. Otherwise, I feel like Yamaha engineered this ABS to really work pretty well in most situations. I don't really feel it coming on or being a problem off-road on gravel roads or dirt roads. It's just those downhill slopes. So that would be one thing to be careful with if you got this bike. Well, a second issue that owners have talked about with the Super Tenere is the cruise control and how it disengages abruptly. Here's the cruise right here. And yes, that's absolutely true. But one thing that will help, a tip that was given to me by Craig Ripley from Living Off the Slab, is when you have the cruise control on and you want to disengage it, just simply do it with the clutch. It's much smoother that way. Here's the third problem that people have talked about with the Yamaha Super Tenere, and it's the gear shift indicator, which is great to have. The problem with it is it doesn't activate when the clutch is pulled in. So you can't tell exactly what gear you're in when you're downshifting through the gears. Now, one of the things I do to deal with that is just look at the indicator before I start shifting so I can keep a mental note of what gear it's in. Staying with the instrument cluster, here's the fourth complaint that people have, and it's related to the riding modes. There's a touring mode and a sport mode. It's in touring mode now. I can flip it into sport mode. Sport mode is really notchy. If you're using it, the throttle transitions are really abrupt. It's almost like if you let off the throttle, it just completely shuts off the fuel injection, and it just feels really notchy and noticeable. So there's a couple of solutions that I have for this. One is I pretty much always just ride in touring mode. It's really smooth and gives me plenty of power for most situations. But if I do have it in sport mode, what I can do is just not completely let off the throttle. Just keep a little bit of throttle on it and feather the clutch so that it's not so abrupt in the transitions. Well, here's a complaint that you'll hear from owners of the Yamaha Super Tenere, that it's very easy to overfill the oil. If you look at your sight glass and it's always overfilled, and this is a problem that I've had. The reason it's difficult for people like me to fill the oil level correctly in the Super Tenere is that it has a dry sump system. Now, on a traditional motorcycle, I would just drain the oil and then fill it until I start to see the level rise in the sight glass, and then just adjust it to where I need it to be. But the Tenere doesn't work that way. The optimal way to do it is to put in the correct amount, the recommended amount in the owner's manual, which where the filter change is 3.59 quarts of oil, and then just let it go. Just make sure that there is some oil in the sight glass, and then you're going to be fine. Here's a little trick on the Yamaha Super Tenere oil level. Before, when the bike was cold, you couldn't see anything in the oil fill. It was completely all the way to the top. But now that the bike's been warmed up a little bit, you see the oil level drops right to the top level. So don't check the level when the bike is cold. Check it when it's warmed up. One of the complaints about the Tenere that you're going to read over and over again is that it's down on power compared to its competitors. And that's true. The Tenere only has about 85 horsepower to the rear wheel, compared to 150 or more for a KTM or Ducati Multistrada, or maybe a little bit less for a GS 1200. Well, for me, I really haven't noticed it too much. I ride this bike more like a sport touring bike. In the corners, it does really well powering out. I liken it to a locomotive. You just feel that it's got the power there, and I never seem to really run out of it. If you're looking for a bike that's more like a sport bike and have a bike that can do sport bike duty as well as dual sport, Tenere is really the wrong bike for you. I would recommend a Multistrada or a KTM. The engines are just so amazing. That's really what you're looking for. Now you can modify the Super Tenere. You can reflash the ECU. You can put a power commander on it. You can change the exhaust. And that's going to cost you probably about $1,000, and maybe you'll get up to 100 horsepower. But for me, the power's plenty, and if you really need more, it's probably not the right bike for you. Well, here's a seventh complaint. People would love it if this bike had a windshield adjustment that you could do with one hand, maybe even while you're riding. Now, I don't need to adjust it while I'm riding, but it would be a lot easier if I could adjust this windshield with one hand. I'll show you right now what it takes to adjust it. You've got two nuts on either side of it. Then you've got to pull out the brackets here at the same time, then slide them up. And oftentimes it's hard to get both of them out to the same degree. There we go. So yeah, it takes maybe 30 seconds or so, but it would sure be nice if it was like any other bike where you could just grab a little handle and pull up on it or pull down. The last complaint I want to talk about is the weight of the bike. Now the Super Tenere weighs in at about 585 pounds wet. By the time I have it loaded up, it's over 600 pounds. It is a big heavy bike, I can't deny that or minimize it. But, you know, it's built kind of like a BMW R1200 GS Adventure. It's built for heavy-duty touring, and it is what it is. People buy the GS Adventure knowing what it is, and you don't hear people complaining about the weight of that bike. A lot of it is the fuel, and this has a 6-gallon fuel tank. So, you know, it's something I wish was a little bit lighter. It's something that you don't want to drop, that's for sure. Once you get underway, it really doesn't feel like you've got 600 pounds under you. But if you're trying to move it around a parking lot or in first gear or dealing with some difficult terrain, yeah, you're definitely going to notice that weight. Well, that's it, folks. That's the top 8 complaints that I've heard about the Yamaha Super Tenere. For me, I don't really think it's a big deal. I've accepted these faults, or I found a way to work around them and minimize them, and I'm still really enjoying the bike. I'm going into my 3rd season on it, and I really can't think of another bike I would want in its place. But did I miss anything, or are there any things that you guys have experienced with the Tenere that you wish were different? Drop those below. I love the conversations that we have about the Tenere. Thanks again for watching. I appreciate any subscriptions and thumbs up, and we'll catch you next time. Bye.